VocalEye Almost Live Zoom, The Unplugging, hosted by Amy and Amantea, with special guests Eileen Barrett, Deanna Gestrin, and Michael Shamata.
Welcome to this almost live virtual event. My name is Amy and Amantea. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm the Associate Director here at VocalEye. I'm your host for these online events, and I'm a member of the blind community. And as always, I just want to start off by shouting out a big thanks to those of you who have made donations and sent in testimonials and supported the work that we offer to our community free of charge. And we think we got pretty great stuff here in terms of content and in terms of community. So thank you all to everybody who just continues to support. It's really great to have that support in hand. Donna will post a link in the chat if you feel like you have the capacity to make a financial contribution. It's not an obligation, of course, but keep those testimonials coming. Shout out to Tony. Tony always writes such lovely testimonials. So thanks, Tony, for that. But I love to read those. So thank you for sharing your feedback and sharing your testimonials. It goes a very long way. If you happen to be watching this event on our YouTube channel, we actually hope that you go with your mouse or with your keyboard and click on like and subscribe. That would really, really help us out. So we hope that you do that. VocalEye is broadcasting to you all this evening from the traditional and stolen lands of the Coast Salish people, in particular the Squamish, the Musqueam, and the Tsleil-Waututh First Nations. Now, the Belfry Theatre is located in Victoria, which is on Vancouver Island, the southern tip. So this also includes an area called Langford, the San Juan, and the Gulf Islands. And the reason I share that is because those are the traditional territories of the Lekwungen peoples. And Lekwungen peoples are known as the Sunhees and the Esquimalt First Nations communities. And I just learned this little thing that I want to share with you about the Lekwungen, which means place to smoke herring. That is what that term means. Place to smoke herring. And I thought that was a lovely little thing to share with you, considering that our production this evening comes from the Belfry on Vancouver Island, Victoria, Vancouver Island. So I'm looking forward to sharing this in our space this evening with you all. So I want to, with no hesitation, introduce into our space our first of many special guests this evening, because we have a few. But before I do that, I'll remind you that it's Wednesday, March the 1st, 2023, and we're going to offer you our almost live event number 111. It's called The Unplugging. It's a described performance video from the Belfry, and Eileen is waiting in the wings for me to say, come on in, Eileen.
Hello, Amy.
Hello.
Good evening, everyone.
It's
nice
so
to be back here.
It's always nice to have you in the space. You described this lovely production. I watched it earlier today. Had a little bit of time to watch it, so I'm excited to watch it again tonight with the community. Eileen, you described this piece, so you're very familiar with it, and with that comes familiarity with like different iterations of this piece and the playwright of this piece.
Yeah.
What can you tell us about, like what this piece was and what this piece is now?
Well, this play has a very long provenance. It took Yvette Nolan, who's the playwright. She says it took her 20 years to write this play. And it started out as her collecting, legends and stories from Indigenous people. She is Indigenous herself. She's of Algonquin and Irish heritage. And I think was quite familiar with some aspects of the story. And then her iteration of it, when she did a first draft of it, was a play called Two Old Women that is based around the idea of, she says it's about aging and our roles as women and traditional knowledge. And that, I think, has stayed at the kernel throughout all the iterations of this play, which ended up through many workshops and input from many actors and writers and people who read it and went on the journey with her, ended up being The Unplugging 20 years later. And I actually saw there were workshop productions of it done, but I did actually have the good fortune to see the first fully fledged production of it at the Arts Club Theatre here in what is known as Vancouver about 10 years ago. And a little bit of trivia for that is the director of that production, Lois Anderson. You will here in tonight's production at the Belfry. So she, as happens a lot in theater, people flip from, director, playwright, actor. You don't just stay in one job. You tend to do, if you're versatile, you tend to, try and see it from all different aspects. So
That's
yeah.
right. Lois is a good friend of the space, has been in our space before sharing
Yeah.
about some work. So thank you for reminding us of that. I appreciate that very much. What can you tell us about the playwright in particular?
Um, well, Yvette has said, I love, with the best of intentions, she said her parents put her in all kinds of, classes and speech classes and dance classes, provided her with everything in the hopes that she would be a well-rounded individual and stay completely away from theater. So they were absolutely horrified when she decided that no, I'm going to do this. And I think when she went off to study at the University of Manitoba, it was with the idea that no, I'm not going to study theater. But by that time, she was already working in many different capacities as, designer and stage manager and things. And so it was, so she's done it all. And I think I've got a couple of, I love the way she talks about the way that, or other people talk about the way that she works, which is a generous, female, matriarchal, and patient way. So she's provided mentorship to a lot of playwrights and directors in her different capacities as well too. So in passing on that knowledge, which I think is really, she said, is really really important to her, because and there's a passing on of knowledge that happens in this play as well too, because that was something that her mother as an Indigenous woman had taken away from her. So I think that coming back to this, trying to bring it back full circle and share that knowledge and pass on that knowledge, whatever it may be, whether Indigenous or not, is very important to her as a creator and as an artist. So yeah, that's a little bit about the way I think that she has said that she likes to work.
And 20 years is a long time to workshop, to have input, to change, to go back and forth, all of those things. Um, you're an actor, and your experience with new works and the industry, is that typically um,
Well, it really depends. Like the genesis of something can just start with a little idea that it's just not the right time or the right place to have it come to full fruition, or maybe gets to the point where you got an idea and you do a first draft or a second draft or a third draft, and then you get folks together to hear it, and then that makes you go, this is not what I thought this play was about, and you take it back to, and it can completely change. And that's, I think, is the wonderful thing. And that what I love about the way that she works is that there isn't a rush, that there's patience there to find what it is meant to be, or meant to be in that iteration. Because a lot of times with financial, like, oh come on, we got to have something ready for this season, things can get rushed through. So yeah, and I think all of us that have been in professional theater have been in productions that this wasn't ready, and you just feel really bad when that's the case, that this was not ready to become a full production. So
right, and then it can become a missed opportunity, right? Because
yeah.
sort of the cat's out of the bag, and people have an impression of it before it was ready to.
And maybe it doesn't get another production because people go, maybe not. Whereas I think the nice thing about seeing this 10 years ago, as we were talking a little bit earlier, I'm almost sad that it's so relevant now.
Yeah.
Because although you could say it's a post-apocalyptic play, but I think it's very funny. There are parts of it that there's so much humor and so much joy in it. And I think that's also what she was saying, is that her idea about how do we build back better after an apocalypse? How do we come back from an apocalypse in a way that is not greedy or arrogant?
Mm-hmm.
And that became the unplugging,
Mm-hmm.
because you have to have joy, or else why bother?
Oh, I mean, that is so resonant to me in general. Again, because of the disability experience and this assumption that the world thinks that, because I live with a disability, that my life doesn't have joy in it, right? And it's like, I am that post-apocalyptic, right? Like, if the world looks at disability as being the post-apocalyptic thing of like a typical life,
Right.
that totally is one of the things that I loved about this. Plus, I really love There's some lovely musical underscoring that I know when I first heard it, I was like, oh, that somehow is like totally tugging at my heartstrings. And
And
I
that's
love it from the very beginning.
and that's for this production. That's
Yeah.
another thing that was the opportunity to, oh, how very cool. There's this wonderful and another Indigenous musician, actor, writer who was available and able to come into this production. And Renata Arluk, who is the director of this production, was like, oh, I want to work with her. And so that's another beautiful piece that all came together. So in this iteration, it's very special because there's live music. So the musician is playing live for each performance. She's just slightly off stage in the wings, in the trees, and just playing. So she can, it's the same music every night, but there's the nuance that's there with the live performance. So I'm glad. I thank you for reminding me of that, Amy. Yeah.
I mean, that's the same as an actor, right? And the lines may be the same every night, but
That's right.
but
Yeah.
sometimes it's very different.
And depending on what the audience is giving you. And what I always love about listening in on the tapes that I'm working on with these ones is that you can tell there's always somebody in the audience who's a very distinct laugh or response or something, and you think that's so cool because that's going to change for the next night or the next performance or whatever it happens to be. Yeah.
Well, I'm delighted. Any last minute things that you want to share with us before we officially hit play?
I don't think so. I think the piece really it's really moving, and it really kind of it speaks for itself. There are long stretches of where the actors are like we were just talking about, moving slowly, methodically, and carefully. So there's perhaps quite a bit more description than we might be used to in some faster paced plays, but that's because of the pace of the piece. So that's all I would say. Yeah.
Well, I mean, we've said it many times in this space before. Description serves the work and it serves the listener. So I think that sounds like you have, without finding a better term, ticked both boxes. I mean, I hate to reduce things to the ticking of boxes, but those are the things that we go into this kind of work with. Okay, are we serving the work? Are we serving the listener? And what's that balance, and what does that mean, right? So
and it's so interesting, isn't it, that every single piece has got a different rhythm, a different cadence, a different way of telling the story.
Yeah. And you're really great at honoring that in how you approach your description. So it's one of the things that I very much appreciate when I am gifted the description by Eileen Barrett.
Well, it's an honor to get the opportunity to work on pieces that it's so great to get good. This needs to be seen, heard, experienced, and I'm glad it's being done.
Wonderful. Well, my friend, I think that is a good segue to letting our audience sit back and enjoy the unplugging. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Amy.
Rick, when you're ready, hit play on the unplugging.
Due to copyright restrictions, this feature presentation has not been recorded. Please check below for more information, including links to the material if it is hosted elsewhere.
Welcome back, everyone. That was the unplugging. Let's see if we have some special guests in our space this evening. We've got Michael Shamata. There's Michael. Do we have Deanna Gestrin with us as well? Well, we've got Michael. Let's see if a magical square is appearing.
Hi, Amy.
Hello, Deanna. There we go. Wonderful. Nice to see you both.
Nice to be here.
I again, maybe just a little background. It's been a while, Deanna, since you've been in space with us. Michael, it's been a while since you've been in space with us as well. But maybe just do a quick, brief introduction of the two of you to our audience, just to get some familiarity. So, Michael, you want to go ahead and just quickly introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm the artistic director at the Belfry Theatre, so I chose this play, and I'm very happy with the reception it's been receiving.
Mm-hmm. Deanna, welcome back.
Hi, Amy. So good to be here. I'm Deanna Gestrin. I was an intern with VocalEye for a time last year, and I really enjoyed my time as part of a counseling degree that I'm doing. Prior to counseling, I've been a music educator for the past 20 years. I'm Indigenous. My family comes from the Statliam Nation, and also I have Stalo, English, and Irish roots. And I'm just really grateful to be here. with you all tonight.
Thank you. It's nice to always know what the lens is in the space. So I appreciate you sharing that. Michael, you start off by saying, I chose this play. And I love that. So can you maybe tell us why this play, why now? Because Eileen started telling us that this play was like 20 years in the making. So why now at the Belfry?
Well, it originated at the Arts Club about 11 years ago, and I didn't see that production, and nor did I see the Toronto production, and I hadn't read it. I don't know why I was avoiding it. And about 3 years ago, I picked up the script, and I just fell in love with it for a couple of reasons. One, primarily this beautiful rediscovery of Elena's Indigenous roots and Elena teaching Byrne, that knowledge, and then Byrne passing it on to Seamus, and the idea that it's then going to go back into the community again at the end. It is just beautiful. Plus, this whole idea of technology suddenly disappearing and what that's going to mean to everyone is so much more pertinent today than it was 11 years ago when the play was first produced. So it just seemed like a really vital piece of theater, really like of the moment, and also just such a beautiful message.
I will tell you, just anecdotally, having not had power in my house yesterday due to heavy snow and in on the North Shore where I am, I felt the unplugging big time.
Yeah.
We are so attached to our devices, and I felt like I had a very unproductive day because I couldn't do anything. And it was very hard to find a place where I could just stop and be with myself for a time. It was very difficult for me to do. Deanna, what was your role in the unplugging?
I've been collaborating with VocalEye. Obviously, we formed close bonds when I was with you all, and I hold such a soft spot in my heart for VocalEye. And so, when appropriate, I'm contacted to consult on, productions that have Indigenous content, and I kind of go through and look at the notes that Eileen has created, the kind of pre-show notes, and also the description. And I just look at pieces that could be added, pieces that could be developed a little bit more, just to kind of give that context and further kind of Indigenous knowledge to it.
Well, one of the moments that's just right at the end here where they talk about Elena putting on a Métis shawl. I'm imagining that maybe, and maybe I'm making an assumption, but maybe that comes through your consultation, because otherwise it's just a shawl to nobody who knows what its significance is.
That's literally one of the examples, that it did say shawl originally, and I added to that. That's a really significant Indigenous symbol. So if I see a shawl with that print, that flowered print, I know that that's a Métis shawl. So it has cultural significance, and I think that those bits of information are really important to share. There's also context, like harvesting off of the tree, the buds and cones off the tree. Well, that's traditional medicine, and so the context around that is that we're harvesting traditional medicine. It's plant medicine, and if we just say they're picking from the tree, it doesn't really give the same context.
Right. I very much appreciate that, because it provides more layers for somebody like myself who doesn't share the same lived experiences as the writer or one of these characters. So it gives me many more layers to be able to learn through the environment as well. I actually think
it's actually a shame all of our audience members
I was just gonna say that, Michael. Just gonna say that. I think that the description would have been beneficial for everybody to have been able to hear it. Michael, I'd love to go back to you and talk a little bit about the play itself, in terms of, you said it was at the Arts Club 11 years ago. We talked a little bit about that with Eileen in the beginning, and that there was a production in Toronto. How do you think that these productions have changed, or this production has changed through those iterations, or at all? Because it still feels very relevant, but do you think there's any significant changes between the versions?
I don't think so particularly. I mean, I think the way we receive it and the way it's played is probably slightly different, just because of the time that we're all living in. But I don't think there are any substantial changes. I think it could have played exactly the same way, but had have a different resonance, 11 years ago than it does now. Did anyone mention that Lois, who played Baron, directed the first production?
Was maybe briefly mentioned in our pre-show chit chat, but you want to go a little deeper into that?
Well, no, it's just interesting she found it a totally different experience, obviously being on the other side, being on stage as opposed to directing it. And also Anton, who played the male lead in Vigil, the last Belfry show that we did VocalEye for, played Seamus in the first production. What is interesting is that the mix of Indigenous and non-Indigenous has changed from production to production.
Oh, you mean the casting of the roles?
Yeah, so Margot Kane and Jen Griffin played the two women in the first production. So two Indigenous women, but a non-Indigenous young man. The Factory Theatre production in Toronto had an all-white cast, which caused a bit of there was a lot of controversy around that. And then this production, which I really love that it's that Elena is Indigenous, passes on to Baron, who's non-Indigenous, the Indigenous ways of living in the land, and then the non-Indigenous Baron teaches the Indigenous young man the ways of the land that he's never had the opportunity to learn. I really love that progression.
How does that progression feel to you, Deanna, from your lens?
Do you mean specifically with the casting?
Yeah.
I think that it makes a lot of sense that it would find its way into what feels better, maybe. And that if it's cast all white and yet it's Indigenous knowledge being passed on, that somebody somewhere would go, oh, that's kind of uncomfortable. Why is that not sitting quite right? Or why do I hesitate with that? And that's kind of the learning that I think makes the difference within that 11-year period. We have different conversations now on these topics than we did 11 years ago.
Yeah, I think that's very true. What about the idea of Elena being the Indigenous person passing stuff on to a non-Indigenous person who passes it on to an Indigenous person, because the lens is not the same as it would be an Indigenous elder passing it on to another, community member. So is there a gap there that feels icky, or is there a gap there that feels appropriate because we're in post-apocalyptic times? Or
to me, there were some really interesting themes that popped out.
Yeah.
And one of the reconciliation themes, actually, it seemed to me, coming from the elder wisdom, the intergenerational learning is what I was noticing, right? But coming from Elena to Bernadette, cross-cultural learning for me is a way to move forward. It's a way to go forward in a better way than what we have. And a lot of the Indigenous youth or younger people are missing knowledge. There's a lot of knowledge gaps with a lot of Indigenous communities and cultures and family groupings and all of that. But if I'm looking at that, and that everybody is kind of learning from elder wisdom, and that we're moving forward to bring that knowledge to everybody so that everybody can live together, it just really speaks of reconciliation to me.
I like that. I'm going to just let our audience know that it's an opportunity for you all to also ask questions of Michael and Deanna, or share comments, or how the space may have impacted you, questions that you have. So know that I'm keeping my eyes open on the participants panel for your raised hands, and I'll just continue to facilitate conversation until I see some hands in the space. One of the things that I like about this, and I have to say, this is a conversation that happens in my family every handful of years, probably more, but this idea of going back to the horse and buggy, with air quotes, right? What happens when all technology goes away and we have to go back to an older time. This is going back. For me, this feels like going back to a time of the first peoples on this land, and learning from them. I don't know if either of you want to speak to that, but that felt really beautiful to me. It's we have lost what we air quotes call civilization, which of course is colonization, and where do we pick up? And we pick up from the first peoples on this land who knew this land and know how to harvest this land and know how to live on this land.
Mm-hmm.
I'd love to know what your perspectives are on that. Deanna, it sounds like you have. I heard a
Yeah, no, I'm just
I may be
agreeing.
stating the obvious, but
No, I'm agreeing. And as I was watching, and I've often thought of this, you know, being from the cultural tradition I come from, I've also wondered, like, what would it be like if we went back to living in community, right? We live a really like individualistic society. Yeah. We are an individualistic society. We live in our own houses. We live quite separate from people. If we go to family, we often have to travel to them. What would it have been like to live in communities, you know, in a collectivistic society? And going through sort of the teachings with Elena to Bernadette, and like understanding about thinking about harvest and thinking about seasons and thinking about what you harvest at different times and what's going to come. All of that really spoke to me in that way that I often wonder, what would it have been like? You know, try to imagine my ancestors here, you know, thousands of years ago. Yeah. And the way that they took care of the land, that is so different, the understanding that is so different than the way we understand land now. Mm-hmm. Right?
What's your response, Michael?
I can't say anything better than what Deanna just said. But I also, to pick up on what you said earlier as well, the idea of just understanding how to make medicines. And, you know, I mean, you know, I'm sure there's lots of, you know, campers and people like that who feel like, well, I could survive on the land if technology disappeared. But to actually really be able to live and survive and thrive on the land is an entirely different thing. And that's knowledge that hasn't been passed on to us, like to a white population. It's knowledge that is embedded in the Indigenous population. And this play really highlights that and celebrates it.
Yeah, to live, to survive, to thrive, but to also honor. Right, I think that there's an important
yes
here.
Yes,
yeah, I think that really came through for me. This piece.
Well, yes, also yes, how important it is that we protect the land, because you know, at some point this may indeed be prophetic, this play.
Well, I mean, that's a whole other theme to explore, right? Is maybe nobody wants to think about it happening, but it's not outside of the realm of possibility that our lives change drastically from what we know them to be in a given moment, right? And then we are asked to learn how to live a different way. Yeah, and for some folks that different way will be drastically different, and for some folks that different way will be maybe a gift in some ways. Deanna, for you, in terms of like working with Eileen and doing the description, how did you find that process?
It's different. I've consulted for live theater, and I've also consulted for like a video like this, a recorded production, and the process is a little different. So it was really interesting to go through the production notes this time, and just communicate a little bit differently with Eileen, and to learn that there are differences in the way that we prepare in the back end of VocalEye and the Almost Live productions.
Did you find that there were any differences in terms of like bringing the cultural knowledge into the space, and then sort of the access need of the blind community, that there was any kind of I don't know, barriers, not the word that I'm looking for, but any issue to bringing those two things together?
Not as far as I know, but that's not to say there aren't. I'm thinking specifically from the consultation aspect. Yeah. If I'm working with a video, I can do that with bright light. I can do that at home. I can do that and turn up the volume. When I went to live theater to watch the production and take notes there, I'm in a dark space. I'm trying to take notes. I can't pause and re-listen to something. So the process for me was very different. But I'm not sure in terms of kind of access or needs. Yeah, I'm not really sure.
I mean, I just find that sometimes when I talk to folks about description who are doing description in different genres and sometimes with the cultural component, that there are things about what a blind audience needs to hear in description that don't necessarily fit with like the consultation piece. And I think if you have a good describer, they make that work, right? But I've just been in some environments where, you know, people would say, oh, you know, we wouldn't talk about I wouldn't talk about myself in that way, like an artist. I wouldn't talk about myself in that way. And it's like, but an artist, or sorry, a blind person may need this for context, and trying to marry those two things together.
I see what you're saying. Absolutely. When we were like, Eileen is wonderful to work with. And so when I was consulting with her, I remember saying something like, names are important. I think she said, you know, should I include the nation or where these people come from? And I said, well, traditionally, we say where we're from. And there are like traditional reasons for doing that, right? You want to contextualize, you want to make connections with somebody who's from a different area, and shared names or names that we've heard or people we've met who are from these places, they build a bridge between communities, right? So I would say that kind of cultural context is really important, and it's different than other types of describing.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think of huge benefit. I see we have a hand from Megan, so I'm going to go to Megan and we'll get Megan to unmute. Just give Megan a moment.
I really liked the whole play. That was really cool. When you were saying you were harvesting the buds, what buds were they harvesting?
Do you recall that, Deanna?
It was from the tree, and I don't know if the tree was named, but
lavender?
It would have been, well, what came to mind for me is spruce tips, but I don't know specifically, and I don't know that it was named. I'm just thinking from my context, like harvesting off of like cones, the cones, and the buds would be like the tips, likely.
Okay, so it wasn't like lavender or
it was during the winter, right? There were winter berries. Of some sort. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, so they were we're harvesting winterberry buds to make the traditional medicine. Okay. Whenever I did that Sunshine Farm, we do berries, but what kind of berries? Like winter berry? What kind of, like strawberries, raspberries, blueberries, that kind of thing?
I don't know what kind.
I don't think it was specified.
Yeah, it said winter berries, and then it said also buds and cones. So I just remember reading that and having kind of an image, but yeah, it wasn't really specific.
Oh, okay. I understand. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Megan. Deanna, do you know? Oh, sorry, Megan.
And I also kind of remind me when you see like the guy Seamus coming in and they were welcoming him, and all of a sudden they get all scared. Kind of remind me of the movie, not the not the Dancing Wolves. It was like when I think it was in Canada where the priest comes in, they come to a tribe and try to get him to go into the community. Like there's the guy that comes out who's a translator. So the guy, the priest talks to the person that's with him, and he has to translate the language. So, and they're trying to get they're trying to get him to go into the community. It kind of reminds me of that in a way.
Interesting. We draw
that movie. I don't know what movie it's called, but it was a Canadian one.
We draw from different things we've come across in our lifetimes. Hey, Megan.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. Before we go to Chantel, because Chantel's got a hand, and so you're on the docket, Chantel. Deanna, do you know what kinds of traditional what kind of usage of the traditional medicines would the berries and the cones and the buds be used for? Is there like a certain ailment, or is it sort of like general health, or?
I'm not an expert in traditional medicines and harvesting, but I know like teas teas and tinctures and salves and things like that. But like I said, I'm not an expert. And then like winterberry is not very specific, depending on where this is in a northern community on Turtle Island. So that's not going to be here on the coast. So it would really depend on what's growing in that area. And I think, yeah, Yvette would be the one who would know more about what she was thinking when she wrote it. Yeah.
Thought I'd throw that in the space. Chantal, you've got a hand.
Thank you, Amy, and thank you to Michael and Deanna for being here tonight with us. As a point of information, I remember they talked about the berries being used as vitamins because it was winter, right?
Yeah,
vitamin C.
Oh,
So
berries being used as vitamins.
Vitamins.
Oh my gosh.
So I am so happy I came tonight. I wasn't sure I would be able to make it, and it just kind of inspires me to learn more about the things that I don't know, the other ways of life, and what other people have to go through. You know, as Amy was pointing out, some of us lost power yesterday and today, and we couldn't manage through that. Imagine having to learn to live off the land. And the one thing I resonated with is my parents were hunters, so a moose in our freezer was not, you know, something I didn't know about. We ate a lot of moose, but for different reasons. They enjoyed the sport. They didn't spoil the meat. They really, truly, that was their getaway. I think they just wanted to get away from the kids, to tell you the truth. And they knew if they went into the woods, nobody would follow them. But I really enjoyed tonight. I hope to hear more of these kinds of plays. And Eileen, you are a wonderful, wonderful describer. You know, we all watch a lot of TV or listen to, you know, different streaming ways of listening to things, and the describers don't always catch the things that blind people really need, as Amy was saying. And one of those things was things like when she says, you know, somebody moved the chair effortlessly. So that means the chair probably wasn't too heavy, or she was very strong. But it kind of gives you a description of she wasn't struggling to move the chair. Yeah, absolutely. I really enjoy that. So that's my take on some of those things. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Chantal. That's really good feedback, because our describers do things a little differently than I'm going to say that some of the traditional framework that would have you not include things like effortlessly. I think that has lovely layers. We're going to go to Karim, and then we're going to go to Tilo. So Karim, you're up.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi. Yeah, I was just listening during the play and Megan's questions about the berries. I do remember them mentioning that they were rosehip berries.
That's right. Good memory.
Yeah, you can pick those in winter.
Great.
I have no idea what rosehip berry is, which is probably why it didn't stick with me.
Yeah, I haven't eaten any myself, but I have had huckleberry, boysenberry, and other wild berries.
Very cool.
And I've heard rose hips as tea.
Yes, you can make
they've been drinking, they drink tea, so
yeah,
that's a natural correlation.
Yeah, the rosehip leaves, you make tea.
Yeah.
Oh, and the buds too.
Yeah.
I know my aunt keeps the buds, dries the buds.
Nice. Now I want some rosehip. Making me want some tea. Thank you, Karim, for sharing that. Thanks for the reminder. Tilo's got a hand.
Hello.
Hello, Tilo.
Two things it reminds me of this play. One is in the beginning, they mentioned about rabbit stew. My mom used to make rabbit stew, so I remember that quite well. Or she used to make it into a kind of a pie, because I remember having it with a crust also.
Like a chicken pot pie, only a rabbit.
Something like that, but with rabbit inside instead.
Yeah.
And then the other one is, my mom said when she was small, she was shown how to look for and pick bitter root. Bitterroot is a medicine that acts, I found out, like an antibiotic. And it also stops coughs if you have a cough, if you have a cold or something.
Do you use
Great.
Tilo, do you use any of these types of traditional medicines from your mom?
I've only used this once. My friend gave it to me once. I don't know where he got it from. It looked exactly like a twig, like a branch, and you chewed it. And the reason why they call it bitterroot, because you can only keep in your mouth maybe about 10 seconds. It was so bad, but you had to swallow the juice, but not the rest of the content, and spit it out. And you need to have some other glass, like orange juice, something to get that awful taste out.
Is it from one particular tree?
I don't know.
It's a root.
It's a root, but I have no idea. It's I guess you get it out and it's wet and you dry it and something, but I like to come across it. It does work, and you can't die from it. If you take too much, all you do is you just go to sleep.
Oh, that's useful too.
It's
That's
safe.
useful too.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I said. I found out, and I have used it once. So if somebody give me some of that bitterroot, I'd definitely use it. I know how to use it.
That's great. Thank you for sharing.
Learning a lot of new things in the space tonight. That's lovely. What's next for this play, Michael? Do you know? Like, is it done now at the Belfry? Do you have?
It's done. It closes on Sunday. They've just started rehearsals in Ottawa at the Great Canadian Theatre Company for production there.
Oh, okay. Do you know what their casting looks like in Ottawa?
I don't know.
I'm so curious, and this is maybe not about this play in particular, but because we have an artistic director in the space, maybe you can tell us a little bit about the process of bringing a play, right? Like, it's not just as simple as opening a book and saying, I want this play.
No.
So what is that for those of theater nerds in the room that just want to know how that works? Who gets paid? All those kinds of things.
Well, the first thing that I do is, once I've decided on a play, is contact the playwright's agent. So they have agents the same as actors and directors, and oftentimes one agent will deal both with writers and with actors and other theater artists, and to see if we can get the rights. It's possible at some times that there might have been someone else might have had the rights already on the island and prevented us from getting them. And then the next step is to approach a director. And we were really lucky that Renelta Arlick, who had been in our production of the Res Sisters, at least 10 years ago, was available. She had already directed it once up in the Yukon. And she used a script. There was a difference in this script. Yvette was asked specifically to write a script for people with sight issues. And so all of the Little Moon poems were added specifically for the transitions in that particular production, which I think Renelta also directed it just as an audio play. And so those weren't in the script that when I first read it, and Renelta brought those with her, which I like. They're so beautiful, and they add so much to the play and the passage of time. And so I feel really lucky that Yvette amended the play in that way, and that we got to share them. So then Renelta and I talked about casting and approached people, and happily we were able to get the cast that we wanted. And then Renelta there's a designer that she's worked with, and so she suggested that she come and do the set and lights, and we suggested someone to do the costumes, and so it comes together piece by piece.
And does that have? So I have a couple of questions. Just the theater nerd in me wants to know.
Yeah.
because you said, maybe that, for example, maybe somebody already on Vancouver Island has done this play. So if it's done in a certain geographical area once, do you have to wait a certain amount of time before you can get the rights to that?
No, it would only be if they had it for the same time period that we
For the same time period. Okay.
that we wanted it. Yeah, and it's usually like you'd say 150 kilometer radius.
Right. So that you're not competing
Yeah,
with each other for the same audience. That makes sense.
Yeah.
And then you also suggested that you had sort of thought about casting in advance. Is that as opposed to like having a casting call where people come and audition?
Oh yeah, that's yes, it's not as common as people think that we bring people into audition for everything. That happens more in I mean, generally, especially with a play, that has 3 actors in it. And if you're dealing with an experienced director, chances are that they've worked with a number of people and can sort of say, I know exactly who'd be perfect for this. These were not the same actors that Renelta had directed in the other production that she had done, but she knew Lois, she knew Marsha's work, and she put the team together. Yeah. Personally, I prefer, there's 2 kinds of auditions. There are general auditions and there are specific auditions. I like doing general auditions, which is when people come in and they do 2 what we call party pieces. So 2 monologues that they've chosen. They're about 3 minutes long, each of them. And I like doing those ones because it's just a chance to get to know someone. And it's interesting, it's always interesting what pieces people choose. I find doing specific auditions where you bring someone in for, say we brought someone in to audition for Seamus. If I was directing it, it's just very difficult because it's not going to be it's not going to be the final performance because we haven't rehearsed yet. And yet somehow you're kind of expecting that person to show you that they can do that part. And I much prefer just meeting people, letting them do their general audition, do their party pieces, and get a sense of whether it's someone I'd like to spend 4 weeks in a rehearsal hall with, which is always a really important part of casting.
Yeah, no kidding. No kidding. You want people to be able to get along and be likable and share space together. And
yeah,
as humans, that's not always something that actually happens in practice. This was a wonderful, wonderful production. I'm really glad we were able to bring it to the VocalEye audience and to share this work. We have a prize draw to get to before we say goodnight to everybody. And Michael, you normally do, but I wonder if you're okay with me offering it to Deanna.
Oh, I was going to suggest that. Yes, please.
Forever. Yes. Deanna, would you like the honor of doing our prize draw for this evening?
Sure.
Yeah. Do you have a vague memory of how this goes?
I know how it goes.
I love it. Well, here comes Donna.
Hi, Michael. Hi, Deanna. Nice
Hi, Donna.
to see you.
Good to see you.
Hi. Now, before we start, Deanna, I want to give an opportunity to someone whose device is called phone. Just simply phone. If you would like to unmute yourself and let us know who you are, we'll just give you a moment. Oh, yeah.
Actually, it's Rick. I've just logged on my phone as a check to make sure the video is okay.
Well, you are not in the draw, Rick. Get out of here.
Okay, not in the draw.
Okay. So, Deanna, I've got names in the bag. And whenever you're ready, whatever word you'd like to shout out.
It'll be a natural medicine. Sweetgrass.
Sweetgrass. And the sweet winner of the Sweetgrass draw is Richard Marion.
Richard Marion. Congratulations. Hey, wait a minute. Wait a minute, Donna. Wait a minute. Come back, Donna.
Oh.
Richard's a board member. Oh, sorry, Richard. Oh, what a dud. Oh, sorry, Richard.
Thank you. No Ricks and no Richards in my draw.
No Richards.
All right.
But Richard, when you come to the live performances, you're eligible for those draws, but not this one. All right, let's try it again.
Okay.
Okay.
Another sacred medicine. Sage.
Sage. And the winner is Chantal.
Chantal. Congratulations, Chantal.
Thank you.
Chantal's not a board member, so
maybe I'll have to share with Richard.
I mean, we're all community
Thank
after
you.
all. Richard knows he's not eligible. So there you go. So Chantal, we'll connect with you by email and we'll get you your prize.
Thank you.
Wonderful. It's been a lovely evening once again. Michael, Deanna, thank you so much for joining us in the space. I can't wait to see what the Belfry brings us next. And I know that Deanna, we've got a lot of work, that you're doing a lot of work with VocalEye. Can you tease us about what's coming up with your participation with VocalEye before we say goodbye?
Okay, well, I think the thing you're hinting at is a possible workshop that we're looking at in August, which would be a drum circle, traditional singing and drumming. Very exciting.
Taught by yourself?
Yeah, led by me.
Led by you, yay! I'm so excited. So folks who live in the local area, we'll let you know when those dates are finalized and that is all put together, but it's like 90% there. We're 90% there. That's awesome. Isn't it great, Michael?
I should say that this is the last almost live version that we'll be doing. We won't be doing any live streaming after this production. I know. Okay. I know. I'm going to miss this very much. So we'll be going back to in-person VocalEye. Yeah.
All right.
Yes,
well,
but
then we'll just have to get all the local folks. Maybe I'll have to come over to the Belfry a couple of times.
Yeah, I know. I'm going to miss this, though. I love this interaction is so fantastic.
Well, it's been a pleasure having you in the space. Thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thank you.
All of the iterations of Almost Live and also this one. Wonderful. Friends, have a lovely, lovely evening. Thanks for joining us at the Almost Live VocalEye space.
Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. Thank you, everybody.
VocalEye, vocaleye.ca. Special thanks to our funders, the Canada Council for the Arts, the British Columbia Arts Council, the Province of British Columbia, and the City of Vancouver.